Are you in the camp of no change, which seems to be most economists, but some expecting perhaps a small hike?
I'll be surprised if they hike now, because there are a few details that needs to arrive. While the Fed had said that they'll hike in December, we need to see that eventuality happen. The inflation number that came out yesterday was much better than expected. In fact, the core inflation number, which was 5.7, has declined a little bit. That's just in the moment. That is just at this time.
So this means that the Reserve Bank can breathe a bit of a sigh of relief, because inflation, the driver, the reason why we need to hike rates at some point is calming down. But what about food inflation, the drought, the expectations given the weak rand of what's going to happen?
Yeah, so this number is historic and it looks at data that has been. But if you forecast going forward, already we had talked about inflation peaking, say 6.5% in the first quarter of next year. This has excluded the drought as severe as it has been, and it had excluded the depreciation of the currency. So you add all that together, we're potentially likely to see a higher inflation peak, perhaps around 7% as a result, because of this. But a central bank has an opportunity to think about it. And that includes saying, is this inflation that's going to stay in the price for a while, or is it a hit and run? In other words, is it transitory? Is it going to be a permanent effect? The answer to this inflation outcome is that it's potentially going to be a transitory situation, because the base effect from lower inflation earlier in the year will come through next year. And the SARB could actually just look through and say, yeah, inflation is going to be high, but we can tolerate it as high level.
Okay, that's interesting. So you don't want to harm your economy for something that's coming, if it is going to be a hit and run, basically.
Indeed, because if you look, retail numbers that also came shows that the household is beginning to feel the pinch of high indebtedness. The unemployment situation is quite concerning. There's high levels of retrenchment that are claimed. There are those that are also having had taken place, particularly in the mining sector. All those really needs to be considered. So I'll be surprised if this SARB actually hike interest rate at this point, because they will think about it and say, let's see what happens globally. Should the Fed hike, which is seemingly a consensus, there's a 70% probability that a December hike will happen with the Fed. I expect them in the new year, the SARB to begin hiking interest rates as a result.
Well, what about the theory, a lot of concern of what's going to happen when the US raises its rates? This talk of a max exodus of investors out of South Africa to America, which now looks more attractive because it has better rates. Some are saying we have to act preemptively to spare our rand. We have to raise rates perhaps even before the US.
Correct. So if you think about the rand, it has depreciated quite significantly, along with other emerging market currencies. We've been talking about this Fed rate hike from the beginning of the year. We were talking about June. June arrived, we began talking about a hike in September. We are now in November, we're talking about a hike in December. So all this information is in the price, right? Emerging market currencies have been beat hard. The ruble has more than halved in value, the Russian currency. The Brazilian real is 40% down. We are similarly in the same situation. One will actually expect a situation where when the facts arrive of a hike, could be a good thing because it introduces certainty, and investors like to know things that are certain. And volatility, if you can see in markets now, is lower because there seemingly is certainty, and that is really good for markets. And I do expect emerging market currencies to strengthen as a result of this certainty as opposed to be weakening.
Okay, well, let's see if the Reserve Bank does what you said and takes stock and does nothing tomorrow, which is good for indebted consumers. And that's where we have to leave it. Lesiba Mothata from Investment Solutions. I'll be back with a business update throughout this evening after 7 o'clock, your next bulletin. See you there.